I was finishing a cup of lemon balm tea when the message came through. The cup hadn't even cooled, but the words had already done what no chill ever could. Please don't come to the party. No hello, no explanation. Just 6 words. From my mother. For a moment, I stared at the screen like it belonged to someone else. My thumb hovered over the message, half expecting it to disappear or turn into something less final. But there it was, pinned above the timestamp like a closing line to a story I didn't realize had ended. I set the phone down and looked out the tall glass windows of my apartment. Seattle's sky stretched in familiar shades of gray, its clouds layered like soft linen. Across the bay, ferries moved slow and deliberate. The sound of them, faint and steady, reminded me that some things at least remained constant. The coffee table in front of me was covered with sample jars and botanical sketches. Lunaria's spring line was almost ready. Bergamot and calendula for radiance, lavender stem cell for overnight repair. I'd been testing the final batch for weeks. My hands still smelled faintly of rosehip and alcohol-free witch hazel. We'd spent 2 years refining this blend. But suddenly, my mind wasn't on the serum. I picked up my phone again, opened the text, and read it once more. No mistake. It was sent by Denise, my mother technically. Though mother had started to feel like an honorary title she didn't always earn. Juliet's birthday was next week. A full resort rental in Santa Barbara, I'd heard. Beachside cocktails, designer table settings, a vegan grazing board curated by some LA influencer chef. I wasn't on the guest list. Not even as a courtesy. Dad used to say the family name only belongs to those who protect it. I used to think that meant honesty, hard work, loyalty. Turns out, it just meant obedience. Out of habit, I opened Instagram. Juliet's profile was the first to load, always curated, always glowing. And there, buried between a sunset shot and a sponsored silk robe reel, was a story post that made my stomach turn. It was a product shot. A new skincare collaboration, hashtagged Clean Beauty and Hail Glow. And the bottle? It was mine. Not just the design, not just the color palette, the formulation. The ratio of ingredients, even the name Lumina Mist was too close to be coincidence. My breath caught as I stared at it. A memory stirred 5 years ago, standing in my old kitchen with Juliet after a long phone call with a supplier. I had offered her a jar of my early prototype. Just try it, I'd said. Tell me what you think. She never responded. I thought she forgot. Apparently she didn't. The phone rang. David's name lit the screen. My marketing lead, sharp kind, always 10 steps ahead. Hey Viv, he said, cheerful and fast as usual. Quick check-in. The new line's ready to go. Press kit's finalized. We're still holding off on naming you directly in the campaign. But we need to decide. Do you want your name on this launch or not? I hesitated. For someone who spent years being unseen, I'd gotten surprisingly comfortable with anonymity. Let the product speak. Let the healing sell itself. No, I said slowly. Not yet. There was a pause. Copy that, he said, and hung up. I sat still for a while. The tea had gone cold. A breeze filtered through the window. It carried a faint scent of the sea, mixed with the dried lavender bundles I kept above the kitchen sink. I got up, walked over to the small side drawer under the bookshelf and opened it. Inside a notebook. Worn edges, soft cream pages. I flipped to a tabbed section, handwritten notes in blue ink. Ratios, pH, balances, infusion times. And there it was, the original formula. 2016. My name in the corner. I closed the notebook, slowly pressing my hand against the cover. Not in anger, not in pride. Just in recognition of the work, of the silence it grew from, of how much I had built while no one was looking. Some people think betrayal is loud, but more often it's quiet. It lives in things not said, invitations not sent, names not mentioned. I picked up my phone again, opened a message thread I hadn't used in months, and typed, "Tell me again what silence can do." I hit send. To Samantha. The city lights were beginning to flicker on below. I stood there a while longer, watching Puget Sound fold into night. There was a photo from Thanksgiving 2015, me holding a tray of sweet potato rolls, Juliet leaning against the counter, mom in pearls and heels. It hung in the hallway of the Hale house for years. At some point, they replaced it with one from the following year. Same kitchen, same angle, same tray. But I wasn't in that one. I didn't notice right away. Maybe because I stopped looking. Back then, I still believed they'd come around. In those days, I spent most evenings in the basement. Not the creepy kind, but the kind you inherit when your mother is too busy decorating upstairs to care what happens below. It smelled faintly of lemon polish and dust. I'd set up a folding table between the laundry unit and a wall of half-empty paint cans. That was where the first tinctures were born, lavender soaked in grapeseed oil, chamomile boiled down into waxy concentrate. I'd walk up with red-stained fingers and excitement in my voice. One evening, I brought up a vial, light green suspended with tiny marigold petals. "I've been working on this all week," I said, placing it on the kitchen counter. "It's anti-inflammatory, low alcohol, perfect for post-treatment skin. Smells like citrus and calm." Juliet raised an eyebrow. "Smells like my yoga studio." Dad didn't even look. He was flipping through investment reports, skimming headlines like they were air. Mom picked it up, turned it over, and said, "Sweetie, be careful with essential oils. Some of them stain countertops." That was all. No one asked what it did. No one asked why I cared enough to lose sleep over it. That night, I sat in the backyard with a cup of tea and watched the lemon tree rustle against the fence. The chair beneath me was sun-faded and peeling, but it was the only place that felt honest. From the kitchen, laughter filtered through the sliding door. Someone had spilled something. Mom was laughing too hard for it to have been me. "You always overthink things," Juliet told me once when I brought up the lack of interest. "They're not dismissing you. They're just busy." Maybe they were. But being busy and being indifferent often feel the same. It wasn't that they told me not to try. It's that they made it clear nothing I did mattered unless it was done their way. Legacy, my dad always said, was built in boardrooms and managed through firm handshakes. "There's no future in handmade creams," he told me once. "It's a hobby, Vivian, not a business." So I left. There was no dramatic exit, no suitcases flung across the driveway. Just a jar slid across the counter to Juliet before I walked out. "Use it if you want," I said, trying to sound light. She smiled, maybe politely. "I don't remember." She didn't say anything else. I moved to Seattle with a duffel bag, my notebooks, and a dream that smelled like eucalyptus and fermented rose water. For a while, it was lonely. I worked part-time in a floral shop and rented the top half of a duplex where the kitchen sloped slightly downward. At night, I experimented with combinations. Some worked, some exploded, but little by little, Lunaria was born. I didn't send out press releases. I didn't even tell the family. I just kept going. What hurt wasn't that they never asked about it. What hurt was that they never noticed I was gone. One night, a year or two after I left, I came back for a family dinner. A cousin was in town, and they wanted to show off the girls. Juliet was glowing fresh off a brand sponsorship, talking about something she was launching soon. Her name was mentioned 4 times during the toast. When someone asked Dad about his daughters, he raised his glass toward Juliet and said, "She's the one carrying the family light now." That was the night I stopped hoping they'd change. Now, 9 years later, in a different city with my name quietly printed on product labels sold in 4 countries, I still catch myself opening that memory like a cut that hasn't fully closed. This morning, I stared at Juliet's Instagram again. The serum. My serum. Not exact repackaged, of course, with a faux crystal cap and gold font. But the body was there. The soul. Mine. I leaned back against the chair and whispered into the room, "You used it anyway." The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. The silence knew. The thing about being invisible is eventually you learn how to move like smoke. I wasn't on the guest list, but I was on the bottle. That would be enough. The air in Santa Barbara that Friday felt like silk, cool, smooth, touched with salt. I arrived mid-morning and checked into a boutique hotel about 3 blocks from the resort Juliet had rented out. Mine was quiet minimalist, pale wood floors, a bowl of fresh figs on the dresser. The front desk didn't know my last name. I liked that. In my room, I unzipped a soft leather tote and pulled out a single glass bottle wrapped in linen. The label was newer, sleeker than the one I'd sketched years ago, but the scent was the same lavender and white tea-soft citrus at the finish. The formula I'd spent 3 winters perfecting testing under fluorescent bulbs and moonlight. I set the bottle on the table facing the window. From this angle, I could see the ocean. Beyond it, the cliffs. Beyond that, a version of myself I used to try and explain to people who weren't listening. My phone buzzed. "Samantha, you're there." Her voice always cut straight clean. "Just checked in. Name's been added under Lunaria's investor list," she said. "No one will question it. Thanks. You don't owe them a reaction, Vivian." "I know. You sure you're ready?" There was a long pause. "I'm not here to make noise," I said, "just to be seen." Later that afternoon, I wandered the boardwalk, shops lined with coral dresses, handmade candles, overpriced dog biscuits. I bought an iced chamomile from a cart near the pier and watched the families pass. No one recognized me, and that was the point. By 5, the resort lobby began to hum. I didn't intend to walk inside, but I was curious. The space was all glass and ivory tile, softened by gold light and a few strategically placed palm fronds. Guests in linen suits and backless dresses milled about toasting early and too loudly. That's when I saw him. Kai Moretti stood near the concierge, flipping through a digital itinerary on his phone. Clean navy jacket, charcoal slacks, no tie. The kind of man who looks like a GQ profile even when he's scanning a schedule. He looked up and smiled politely. "Checking in," he asked. I shook my head. "Just passing through." He chuckled. "Aren't we all?" There was a short pause. I noticed he was holding a small canvas bag with the initials JH stamped in rose gold. A promo gift. "You here for the Hale event?" he asked. "Something like that." He extended a hand. "Kai, I'm working with Juliet on the launch." I shook it. "Vivian." There was a flicker like the name registered somewhere, but not quite. He didn't blink. "Great product design," he added. "Seriously minimal elegant. We're announcing it tomorrow night. Big reveal moment. Exciting?" I said, folding my arms. He looked around. "If you're in the industry, I think you'll appreciate it. The scent profile is brilliant. Who came up with that blend?" I tilted my head slightly. "A friend." He smiled again, nodded, and was pulled away by a resort staffer before he could ask more. I watched him walk off, confident, utterly unaware of the history resting in that bottle. Back at my hotel, I kicked off my shoes and changed into a soft gray tunic, then walked to the beach. There was something sacred about the water at dusk, waves that didn't demand anything, sand that forgave every step. I carried the serum bottle in my hand, rolling it between my fingers like a stone. I sat on a low driftwood log, watching gulls dip and rise. The sky burned peach, then coral, then ash, and somewhere between the hush of the sea and the distant music from the resort lawn, I realized Kai didn't know who I was. But tomorrow, in front of all those guests, he'd say my name without even knowing it, and I would be undeniable. Back in the room, I opened a message to David. "Make sure our trademarks are updated." Then I stared at the words, paused, and deleted them. There was nothing to prove, only something to be present for. The chandeliers sparkled like stars, trying too hard. Waiters circled with trays of cucumber canapés and champagne flutes balanced with ease. Somewhere between the salmon course and the first toast, the room forgot to breathe. The ballroom shimmered in soft gold, every table dressed in pale linen and eucalyptus sprigs. Branded signs read, "Hale Glow, where legacy meets luminescence." I wondered who came up with that. Probably a PR intern paid too little to know the irony. I sat near the back, just behind a decorative ficus, and a woman in a feathered shawl who kept referring to herself as a wellness futurist. My name wasn't on the seating chart, but I wasn't there to be listed. Samantha had placed me through Lunaria's silent partnership. It was a clean entry, no introductions, no smiles, no family nods. From this vantage, I had a clear view of the stage. A string quartet played something elegant and forgettable. Juliet stood near the floral archway, glowing in a silver column dress. She looked beautiful. She always did. The first few speeches were typical. Her high school art teacher talked about vision. A college roommate reminisced about their shared obsession with bath bombs. Denise beamed from her table like royalty in exile. Then came the main announcement. Kai Moretti stepped up to the mic. The lighting shifted ever so slightly as a projector whirred to life. Tonight, he began, "We're not just celebrating Juliet's birthday, we're celebrating a new chapter in beauty." He was smooth, rehearsed, charming, a man who believed in what he was saying. I met Juliet through a mutual mentor, and from the moment she described her idea, I knew it wasn't just a brand. It was a bridge. A soft click. Slide won the serum bottle. My serum, filtered in golden tones resting on marble. Kai continued, "The formulation we're launching tomorrow isn't new in the scientific sense, but it is new in how it's being delivered to the world. Originally designed by Vivian Hale." The room shifted, not in sound but in air. Denise's glass slipped. A sharp clink. Kenneth turned toward the screen, stiff as polished wood. Juliet didn't move, didn't blink. Click. Slide 2 ingredient breakdown. Click. Slide 3 consumer reviews from a silent beta release, ones Lunaria had authorized. I recognized the blur on the watermark. I stayed seated. Kai kept going, unaware of what he'd just done. Vivian Hale's work was the foundation of Lunaria's first prototypes. What you'll experience tomorrow is a blend refined by our in-house chemists, but its heart remains hers. Still, he didn't realize. Still, he didn't know I was already in the room. I stood. Slowly. Pushed my chair in without a sound. My eyes didn't seek anyone's. There was nothing left to see. As I stepped through the crowd, I felt the ripple behind me, shoulders shifting, eyes turning, breath hitching. My heels clicked gently against the marble floor, a steady rhythm no one could talk over. The hallway was cooler, quieter. The doors behind me stayed open long enough for Kai to catch a glimpse. I heard his voice falter just slightly. Then it started. The whispering. The sharp inhale of collective realization. Names and narratives rearranging themselves in real time. Vivian Hale, Lunaria, the silent one. The one who left. I reached the edge of the courtyard before I heard the footsteps. Not rushed, not angry, just deliberate. Was it really you? Juliet's voice was soft, almost a breath. I turned slowly. She stood there, barefoot heels dangling from one hand, her silver dress brushing the ground. Her eyes were wide, not angry, not ashamed, just full of something that hadn't been there before. Recognition. I didn't answer. Not yet. I wanted her to sit with the question a little longer, because sometimes the loudest truth is the one you don't have to say. The garden behind the resort was tucked away quiet in the way only early mornings can be. Thin sunlight fell through the trellis, warming the stone floor in soft patches. There were 2 chairs at a small iron table, one occupied, one waiting. Juliet sat with her bare feet tucked beneath the hem of a linen dress, hair unstyled, eyes rimmed with the kind of weariness that couldn't be powdered away. A pot of tea sat between us, untouched. The fruit on her plate had begun to sweat in the sun. She didn't speak right away, and I didn't help her start. Finally, she looked up. "I didn't know it still mattered," she whispered. Her voice wasn't rehearsed this time. I stirred the tea gently. The clink of ceramic against ceramic felt louder than it was. "You never said it mattered." I met her gaze. "You never asked if it did." Her face shifted, subtle but real. A recognition, maybe. Or maybe a realization that the version of me she'd constructed was missing a lot of chapters. She sat back slightly, folding her hands into her lap. "I thought it was just something you gave me, like a hobby you outgrew." I nodded slowly. Not in agreement, just acknowledgement. "I gave it to you to try," I said, "not to claim." She looked down. Her fingers tightened. "I didn't mean to take anything." "You didn't steal," I said quietly. "You assumed that I'd never matter enough for it to be worth checking." The wind picked up, rustling the vines along the wooden fence. Somewhere beyond the garden wall, staff clinked plates and reset banquet tables. The world as usual moved on. "I wasn't trying to erase you," Juliet said, her voice thinner now. I just thought, maybe if I used it, you'd see it as something we built together. But we didn't build it together. That part landed. Her breath caught just a little. For 7 years, I continued, you were celebrated for things you hadn't done, while I kept building. Alone. No posts, no press. Just product night after night. While you were launching hashtags, I was hand-bottling formulas. Juliet blinked. The tears didn't fall yet, but they were there, suspended. I didn't know how much it cost you, she said. No, I replied, you didn't ask. That was the thing. The harm hadn't been in a single moment. It was in the 1,000 tiny choices to look away. The dinners where no one mentioned my name. The holidays where a thank you for the prototype turned into a brand without credit. The assumption that quiet meant permission. Juliet let out a small, shaky breath. I never wanted to be the reason you left. You weren't, I said. But you were the reason I didn't come back. The silence stretched. The tea between us went cold. Still, neither of us reached for it. Finally, Juliet wiped at her cheek. Are we still sisters? It was the kind of question a child might ask, not out of naivety, but because the stakes suddenly felt too big for anything else. I stood brushing invisible dust from my dress. Only if we start telling the truth. She nodded slowly. Not in understanding, but in willingness. That was enough for now. As I turned to leave, I saw him. Kenneth stood at the edge of the garden path, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on me like he'd been waiting for a signal. There was no swagger, no fatherly pride, just the tentative stillness of a man preparing to unlearn. Vivian, can we talk? The words hung in the air like dew on a morning leaf, fragile, soft. Maybe too late. I didn't answer. Not yet. 2 weeks later, I sat alone in my office as our first national Lunaria TV spot aired. It was the same network my father once used to brag about, back when family excellence meant monogrammed blazers, stock photos and brochures, and speeches about legacy that left no space for daughters like me. Now the screen showed hands, not faces. A woman's hand mixing serum. A child's hand reaching for calendula balm. A man's hand resting on his own ashy knuckles. Then the tagline in soft serif made clean, made quiet, made real. No voiceover, no loud crescendo, just truth, whispered like a promise. The commercial ended. I let the silence settle. My office was warm, the early evening light casting gold on the wooden floor. A potted fern stretched toward the windows. A ceramic teapot steamed gently on the corner table, chamomile and sage. I'd stopped rushing somewhere along the way. There was a knock. But it wasn't on the door. It was the mail slot, an envelope thick cream stock tucked gently inside. No logo. Just my name in blue ink, careful cursive I hadn't seen in a while. Juliet. I opened it slowly. No lengthy apology, no poetic lines. Just a note. Thank you for building what I didn't know I needed. I'm still learning. J. There was a pressed flower taped to the corner. I touched it with 2 fingers. Lavender. From Arizona, maybe. From home. Or from something close enough. The intercom buzzed. Vivian, there's someone downstairs asking for you. A pause. He says he's your father. I didn't answer for a moment. Just held the envelope and let the idea of the moment stretch. Not dread, not even surprise. Just a kind of weight I knew how to carry now. Send him up, I said. I made no move to clean the desk or smooth my shirt. I just poured 2 cups of tea, equal amounts, no sugar. When Kenneth Hale entered the room, he looked smaller. Not older exactly, but scaled down from the man I remembered. His coat hung looser. His eyes searched without scanning. He held a slim folder in one hand, and under his arm, a photo frame. He stood for a moment in the doorway, then stepped in gently, closing the door behind him. I saw the ad, he said. I nodded. I figured you might. He looked around the space, took in the soft lights, the moss wall by the bookshelf, the quiet hum of something living and unsaid. This place? He trailed off. It suits you. I gestured to the seat across from mine. He sat. He didn't pull out papers or rehearsed words. Instead, he set the photo frame on the desk between us. It was a recent picture. Juliet, Denise, Kenneth, and me. Cut and edited in, but not badly. I looked like I belonged. Finally. I know it's not real, he said. But I wanted to see it anyway. I didn't reach for it, just looked. I was wrong, he added, voice lower now. But I never stopped hoping you'd still be ours. The word ours hung strangely in the air. It didn't sting. It didn't soothe. It just floated there. I poured the tea, placed his cup in front of him. He blinked once, then nodded. He didn't drink. Neither did I. The moment wasn't about the tea. He stood quietly after a few minutes, walked toward the door. Just before leaving, he turned. In the hall, just above the elevator, hung the new office plaque. Founder, Vivian Hale. He paused. I didn't offer a smile. He didn't ask for one. He left. And I stood there, hands wrapped around a cooling cup, feeling nothing sharp, only a quiet steadiness. I picked up my phone, opened a message thread already starred. He came, but I didn't shrink. I hit send, to Samantha. Out the window, the last light of day stretched long across the city. Seattle looked soft at this hour, tired, but not defeated. Like it had been holding space all along. There would be more parties, more launches, more stories twisted and returned, but they would not shape me. I had already become what they never saw coming. That evening after he left, I didn't replay the conversation or search for meaning between the pauses. I simply poured another cup of tea and let the quiet fill the room. The plaque on my wall read Founder, but what mattered more was that I believed it now. Sometimes we spend years trying to be heard only to realize our silence was speaking the whole time. Families don't always wound with cruelty. Often it's the forgetting, the assuming the way love is rationed like a privilege instead of a given. But dignity doesn't require permission. And healing doesn't always come with an apology. It comes when we choose to stop shrinking. If this story reminded you of a moment when you felt unseen, know that you're not alone. Our worth isn't in how loudly we reclaim it, but in how steadily we stand. And sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is stay standing. If this journey resonated with you, I'd love to hear what it stirred in your heart. Share your thoughts or tell me what part stayed with you the most. Thank you for walking through these quiet chapters with me.